trying to go into managing your ADHD while you're beating yourself up, while you're grieving every time you mess up, it's not going to work. And then I go through a series of pillars, and I start with pillar 2, which is anchor your sleep. Right. Because sleep and sleep disruption, disturbance, is so common in ADHD.
I hear about it all the time.
It's so common. I mean, there's
with me especially. As well.
And the most common complaint is my mind is just non-stop.
Yeah.
I can't shut it down to bring sleep, which means you go to bed later. Yeah. In fact, there's biological evidence to show that your what's called circadian rhythm, your sleep cycle, is literally shifted later, almost into 40 minutes later in people with ADHD. Now, if you go to bed later, and many people with ADHD go much later than 40 minutes, but if you go to bed later, then you have to decide, am I going to get up and stick with the rest of the world that's waking up and going to work for 9 o'clock, or am I going to sleep what I need to sleep? And what you end up doing is building up a sleep deficit. And then you end up napping in the afternoon because you're exhausted, and the whole thing gets all over the place. And I really don't think you can make much progress until you regulate your sleep cycle. Once you regulate and stabilize your sleep, then the next stage is to look at the morning routine and the evening routine either side of it, because they're very important. Calming down the system and also building up the system. A number of people with ADHD fall out of bed and then scramble around looking for clothes and rush down eating the breakfast on the move. I mean, you're going to relate. You're going to relate to that so much. So once you get the morning and evening routine and you finish pillar 2, you move on to pillar 3, and there's a gradual build, and that's take control of your time. And
this is a big one.
This is a big one, but it's not so big now because you've already dealt with sleep. Right. And the morning and evening routine. You're literally dealing with 8 to 10 hours.
Right, okay.
And then in that 8 to 10 hours, you need to think about how you manage tasks and how you manage time. And, I go down to a granular level, keep it really simple, but teaching people how to use a to-do list, an action list, a task list, whatever you want to call it, and how to effectively use a diary, calendar, diary planner, whatever you want to call it, but how to do it in a really simplistic way that is sustainable.
Because I can overcomplicate that.
Absolutely.
And I can put so much on my to-do list that then I feel like a failure. Yeah. And that will stop me from sleeping because I'll still have not done all my to-do list.
Absolutely.
And, so it can be
but there's exactly how you manage, how you do this is so important, because you don't want to set yourself up for failure. And you overload yourself. And so it's really about getting that balance right. And one of the biggest things in this area is procrastination. And it's the hallmark of adult ADHD. So this means basically putting something off later that you've committed to doing now. And there's all sorts of reasons underpinning procrastination, but it's definitely an important, that comes in that pillar. And then it's about managing your environment. We've talked about how the environment, if you have ADHD symptoms in the right environment, they won't cause impairment because you set yourself up. You set up your environment, you choose a type of job that works with you, a start time that works with you. You sort of minimize the impact of the symptoms by changing things around you. And there's endless ways you can do that. So, and it's about physical space in terms of how do you lay out, where is there clutter and how do you declutter and do, how do you manage your workspace, your kitchen space and, your clothes cupboard. You're down to that granular level.
I've become fascinated about this.
Yeah, it's so important.
Since we talked about it a long time ago, I've become something very simple, like I put my clothes out for the next day the night before I go to bed. Which is something which seems so silly, right? But I can be 45 minutes late to leave the house because I can't decide what to wear. And I, which is such a vain, ridiculous thing to say.
Circles.
I was trying different things on. Then my room's a mess because everything's everywhere. I've tried things on. I didn't like it, But then the night before, I pick something. That's what I'm wearing. I get up, I have my shower, I do what I need to do, I do my morning routine, and I get dressed in those clothes and I'm done. That has made a massive change in my life. Like it's a huge hack for me.
There's hundreds and thousands of things you can do. Obviously, you've got to tailor the thing to the individual and their needs.
I had to change that because I decided that, right, I'm just going to wear the same thing every day. So I bought 4 different black suits and white T-shirts. And I thought, this is going to be my uniform. I'm going to wear a black suit with a white T-shirt every day. That lasted a week. And I was so bored of that.
And I also talk about inputs. And what I mean by that is we have information of different forms firing at us through emails, through text, through social media, through conversations in the corridor, through telephone calls, through meetings. We have information, and sometimes we get, well, often in ADHD, you get overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
By overloaded.
Yeah.
And when you're overloaded, you're in a chaos state.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where people burn out and they shut down and they leave it all. They can't handle it.
Can't deal with it. Yeah.
So you need to have systems for managing and stemming the flow of information.
Yeah, this is something I struggle with.
Yeah.
This is something I need to work on.
Yeah.
Right, so what do you mean by that? How do we build these systems?
So it's about recognizing all the different inputs of information.
Yeah.
Finding out where you have difficulty, because obviously not everyone's the same, so you got to target it. And then there'll be guidance on email management. So many people with ADHD struggle with emails. It's the bane. Do you know what I see with ADHD is I see often very talented people who, in a job, for example, who should be spending 80% of the time doing the stuff they're brilliant at and 20% doing the administration around it.
Yeah.
Flipping on its head.
Absolutely.
80% of wasting their time trying to do things that they're struggling with, and 20% showing their flair.
That's exactly what drives me crazy.
Yeah, this is common.
I've spent so much time making up for the fact that I'm not very good at this thing, trying to rectify it.
Trying to hide it.
I'm trying to hide it.
Yeah.
That I'm not doing the thing I'm good at.
Yeah, exactly.
I've recently started to try and outsource those things. I'm obviously I understand I'm in a very privileged position to be able to do that, but I've managed to find people who can deal with these things for me, and for me personally, it's made a massive difference. But then I feel shame about it. I feel like I should be able to do these things. I'm a big boy. I should be able to, manage my life, but whenever I try, I just fail.
No. I have the saying that the true success with ADHD is actually working out the things that you struggled with all your life.
Yeah.
And not trying to overcome them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find a way of not doing them. And concentrate on the things that you're good at, on your strengths.
That is so huge to hear.
It's massively important.
So huge to hear, because I beat myself up about these things. I'm like, I should be able to deal with this stuff.
Yeah, but just it's acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you said that you're privileged and you can outsource. And, there's ways of outsourcing that don't involve spending money. If we were to have a more of a growth mindset attitude, and people were encouraged to be more vulnerable about what they struggle with, but also to focus on the things that they're really good at.
Yeah.
And if we were to create teams in work environments where there's an honesty and openness about strengths and vulnerabilities, you can mix and match people together.
Absolutely,
and make things. If we could lose the sort of shame that permeates through workplaces and actually say to people, no, we know that you're going to be brilliant at stuff and we know you're going to struggle. Let's just be honest and open and create units where the strengths in every area are covered. Yeah. I mean, I really believe this is the future.
Yeah.
But it does need us to shift into a sort of more open about our difficulty state and more of a growth mindset.